All right, Spencer, appreciate you joining the ride. Obviously, some big news dropping a few weeks ago. You are officially the new GM over at the Chaos Lacrosse Club. Excited to be having you. How are you doing today, and what are you getting after here since you're officially hired by the PLL?
Yeah, doing great. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on. It's been pretty good. Coach Colsey and I have been, like I said, pretty lockstep in our decisions and what we think and how we want to construct this roster. We feel like it's pretty darn good already. We're championship ready on the defensive end with a great goalkeeper. And, we've made some moves that we feel like have improved us on, at both the shorty position as well as on the offensive end. And then just super excited to get to the college draft. We're very lucky. We have kids that are playing big time college lacrosse, and we get to see the best teams in the country each Saturday. As fans and obviously now as professional coaches and GMs. So it's been pretty cool so far. Just excited to be back in pro lacrosse. It's been a couple years, and I spent 20 years in pro lacrosse prior. Almost half my life in the pro game. So it's just something that I think I do well. And one of the things that I love is trying to construct rosters based off of chemistry and character. Obviously, talent's always important. But just excited to see where we can take this thing.
Yeah, I've had a ton of guests here on the podcast. This is episode 12 at this point, and I haven't had any GMs on yet, Spencer. So this is a good convo. I'm excited to talk roster construction. How does that conversation about taking over that position start? Did the PLL reach out to you? Anything you can tell me, obviously, but how did that conversation start? And then once you did get the job, what's the first thing you saw about the Chaos that needed maybe change or just pieces that needed to be moved?
Well, it's crazy because Roy Colsey and I both interviewed for the head position. And we went through some really fun exercises, both of us did, separately. And when they approached me about a potential GM position that they were thinking about, the light bulb went off. And that's, what I've done for so long. It's what I feel like I'm good at. Obviously would love to be on the sidelines, but, being behind the scenes and being able to put rosters together and shape this thing properly is something that I jumped all over. So I was extremely excited. And then obviously to be able to work with a legend in Roy Colsey. I mean, he's one of my all-time favorites as a player. Got to compete against him when I was with LA and he was with Philly. Lost to him in the championship. So really, really cool to be on the same team as him. And in terms of what we did first was as soon as we knew, we were on the phone instantly and tried to start making moves as soon as we were given permission. So it's been pretty cool and very easygoing. We have a great team. We are championship ready at the defensive end. We have an amazing goalkeeper, probably the best in the world. And I think just from the outside as a fan of pro lacrosse, looking in is that you always want to generate more goals. I think if there was a weakness, I don't think that we were bad on the offensive end last year. I think that a lot of times we were pretty unlucky. There was a lot of balls that hit the pipe. There was goalies that got hot. And sometimes you look at it like, okay, we're failing at the offensive end, which, and I look at it as like a test. You get 8 out of 10, that's still a pretty high grade. It just, you didn't happen to score that time. So I think that they play, pretty solid offense, and we just have to find a way to put the ball in the back of the net and support the defensive end.
Spencer, I want to have a small tangent here. Obviously, the PLL has gone through some changes as it's founded and, as it continues to kind of grow. One of those major changes is the move from kind of this traveling band where it's you just Redwoods LC to now it's the California Redwoods and it's the Carolina Chaos. And being a Virginian myself, I was a Redwoods fan. And then once they're a California team, I'm like, well, I want to find something closer to home here with the Chaos. How do you look at the relationship between those states or those fans in those states in that region when you're talking about growing the Chaos, if at all? I know roster construction's huge. We'll talk about it here today. But when it comes to connecting with the fans in Carolina specifically or this area, how do you look at that?
I look at it in a way that, I think that there's fans all over the world that are just, absolute lacrosse and professional lacrosse fans that are going to get behind it. When you have guys that have played at Duke and North Carolina, that makes it little easier to get people in because they're very used to watching those guys play for the 4 years in college. So I think that that's a part of it. I believe that the Carolina fan base is going to be happy that we were able to sign Josh or trade for Josh Sawada. But I think for the most part is, from back in the early days of pro lacrosse, to now, there's those diehard fans that just enjoy the game, played it at a spectacular level at very high pace. So I think in terms of getting there and just meeting people, it's a very warm, introduction to the people that we may not know, and gaining young fans and older fans and maybe even fans that just happen to be sports fans. Carolina they've always done very, very good. They're very loud. They're very exciting. They have great excitement in how they approach, each and every game. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun to get down there and spend a weekend with those great fans.
You have experience in both the MLL and the PLL, obviously, even at the GM level. How do those specific organizations differ? It's a large conversation. Pro lacrosse has been, traditionally the less popular of the two when it comes to college in the pro game. I'm very interested in growing out the pro game as much as we can. That's the only way forward, I think, in growing out this game to the levels it should be. So how does the MLL kind of differ from the PLL, having been a part now of both?
That's a good question. It's tough to answer. One of the things that I'll take this direction on it is that when I played, I thought we were pretty good at lacrosse, and there was a number of guys that were in extremely good condition. I think that the athlete nowadays is more comparable to a traditional, NFL, NBA type player. When you look at these guys, you're not looking at them being like, oh, that's a professional lacrosse player. You're looking at them as that's a professional athlete. So I think that what the players have done in, let's just say, the last 10 years, 10, 15 years, whatever it may be, they've really taken control of their bodies, the agility and the strength, coaches that they've brought in. And it's a 12-month out of the year gig. And these guys are taking it that this is a full-time job where, back in the day, it might have been, 6 or 7 months, where you get your body in shape for the season, and then, you kind of do your own thing. And then when it's a couple weeks before you get back in shape, now these guys are on a consistent basis where they're playing, 10, 11 months out of the year. And it's really become full-time professional sports. And I think that might be the difference in terms of, the cities and things of that nature. I can't really answer because I haven't been there just yet. But what I have seen as a fan, I've been to Philly, I've been to the Baltimore games. I coached in the sixes. It just seems as if, it has become, and I've said this, it just more professional. It's just become, very, very serious, where it was a summer league before. And now it's a full-time gig to make sure that you're going to get into that starting lineup, that you're going to remain in that starting lineup. And I think that's a good thing for the growth of it.
I 100% agree. I've loved the moves that the PLL has made since its inception. Just the conversations you're having behind the scenes now, being with the Chaos and the combos you're having with people in the PLL. What do you think the strategy is going forward into the next 5 years for the professional game, the professional league? Like, what's the strategy on the PLL side? I know obviously you're not taking me into the boardroom, but just from your perspective, what do you see as the strategy going forward for the best growth of PLL?
I mean, I think as, just fan base, I think that, getting as many fans to support it, on and off the field consistently is, to me, just from the outside looking in, is the most important. Our goal is to go as the Carolina Chaos and put forth the best roster that we can and play the best lacrosse that we can and hopefully compete for championships. On our end, we're going to just try to put a great product on the field and give these guys something to get excited about and to love to watch. But I think in every city that we go to, it's a matter of, getting a consistent fan base, selling the arenas out, and then obviously keep growing the sport. I think that the PLL sixes is just amazing. I think that the game itself is awesome. I was lucky enough to coach in the first tournament, And then I've been down there for the second and third, and I just think that it's so high level. And then to take it up a notch, I thought the women were fantastic this year. So I think that's a really good thing to do, because you sit and you wait, and you're like, okay, like, when's the pro lacrosse starting? Well, now you have this week long event where you can see every game on ESPN and really watch high level professional lacrosse, and then that leads you right into, we're pretty close to training camp. So I think fan base is the most important thing.
100%. It's funny, the conversations I have on the ground, just, being a high school coach and talking with a ton of people about the Sixes game. And there's a lot of pushback to changing the way that the game looks, and maybe it's because I was a really big basketball nut growing up, and I love that game, as well as lacrosse, obviously. But I'm okay with the Sixes game. But you see a lot of people, that doesn't look like lacrosse. That it just doesn't feel like that. Do you feel that pushback, and do you see any of that conversation taking place?
Absolutely. I mean, I think when, before the Sixes came about, you look at lacrosse, both male and female, there's so many different rules. There's so many ways that it's being played. It's different in pro than it is in college, than it is in international. And I think slowly but surely things are coming together. But the pace of play and the talent of both the guys and the girls, of when you watch the Sixes, to me, it's just one of the most exciting things, is that although there's a lot of goals scored, it's just so super exciting, because you still see great defensive plays. You see tough physical play. You see guys and gals get after each other. And then you get to see, you have the luxury of getting to watch 50 goals in a game, which I think is extremely important. I'm a big soccer guy, and one of the things with soccer was, they don't score enough. Well, they didn't watch like all of the fancy stuff and all of the cool things that were happening, and the strategies and schemes that were put into play. It was just, the end result was, there was only one goal. Well, the game itself is extremely exciting. I just think that, Sixes enables you to get up and down the field in a quick manner, just like basketball. And the 2-point arc that they do in the PLL Sixes, that's just nuts to me. It's the way that you can get back into a game. And when we saw the Cannons against the Atlas this year, I think they scored 4 goals in 20 seconds or whatever it was off of 2 shots. So it's just, yes, there's pushback. I think that has to do with a lot of rules. There's a lot of old school people in our game, that really are kind of against change, but I think that the more it's being played, the more it is played, that people are going to get behind it and really enjoy it. I can tell you at the Sixes event, the fan base they enjoy it. Everybody that's there is enjoying the heck out of it.
All right, before we kind of zoom back in on the chaos and the trades you've made here in the last month, I do want to focus on the 2025 season here with the college game. Are you watching it at all? Is there anything that stands out to you from a team or a player perspective? Just kind of looking at, the current season.
Well, I'm lucky enough to have a young son that's a freshman at the University of Maryland. So I'm definitely a Terps fan. But being able to see the level of play and there was some teams that were ranked pretty high, that might have slipped up a little bit and now are kind of creeping back in their conference play. I'm interested to see how this thing shakes out at the end. I didn't expect Notre Dame to have a couple losses going in.
What's with the Connery effect here on Maryland?
Good question. I was just going to say that, Michigan has seemed to have had Maryland's number here in the past. Big Ten starting, ACC starting. I just think it's going to get really, really good. And we're going to see a heck of a playoff push from a lot of these teams.
I guess the easy answer would be the higher ranked team, but of like the kind of dark horses, I would say Army or Richmond. Who do you think performs better down the stretch? We saw Army just lost to BU. Who do you think performs there?
I think that both teams have phenomenal staffs. I think that Army plays tremendous defense, and I believe that defense does win championships. So I think at the end of the day, they do have a tough conference that they're going to roll through, and have to compete and win to get in. But that defense is playing at a very high level. I think that, was it a 9-8 game or a 10-9? I mean, they're still not letting up a lot of goals, even in a loss, to BU. So it's tough to score on them. So you're going to have the same, defensive display that they're putting on, and you're going to have to outmatch them in that position. So I think that as they get into the playoffs and you talk about low scoring games and turning it into a 6-on-6 battle, I would probably give Army the edge. But,
Mm.
Coach Shamati is doing a great job down at Richmond. He's got those guys playing and playing at a very high level.
You've obviously watched every single minute of the Maryland games. What's the biggest bugaboo for Maryland right now? It seems like every year it's the same with Maryland. They're just the gears are turning always, right? The defense is going to be strapped up. The offense is going to be solid in the 6-on-6. They're going to push transition when they can, but it's pretty just a solid Maryland team every year. But what's their biggest weakness you see, or things that you see as a fan?
I don't know if it's a weakness. They had a game against Loyola where they weren't at their best and found a way to win. I believe that face-offs are going to always be, and they've been pretty good, but face-offs are going to be key. The more possessions you can get, the better, you'll be. I think that Logan McNaney has been unreal. So, and to this point, I mean, he's been spectacular. So the question would be is if he's just really good, and they're in games, could they lose a one or two goal game or here and there? But, their motto of be the best, it just sits within all of them, from the coaching staff, all of their, admin team, and down to the players. These guys believe in that. They play for one another. They don't care who scores. You see their excitement on the bench, guys that are redshirted or don't get much time. They are as together as they can be, and I think that stems from an amazing, which I feel to be the best coaching staff in the country. I feel like those guys are prepared to play in every single game, and whether great, good, or bad, that team is prepared each week and ready to go. And after that game is played, it's put in the past, and they move on to the next one. As Bill Belichick said, we're on to Cincinnati.
Love that, man. While we're talking about Maryland, let's talk about a team down the road. How did it feel having a son commit to a rival here in UMD when you went to Towson?
To be honest with you, Spence, went through the recruiting journey and had a few really high level options that I never had. He is 1,000 times better than I was at my best. He's probably 1,000 times better at his worst than I was at my best. But to see him go play for Coach Tillman and his staff, we drafted Jesse Bernhardt, so I have a great relationship with Jesse and his family. Michael Phipps is a very, very close friend. The Phipps family is a very close friend. So to see Spence go to Maryland to play for people that I care deeply about as friends, people, coaches, he made the right choice. And then to get to meet the players that are down there, the way that they treat each other is just it's really kind of heartfelt, and it's easy on a parent that obviously I have such a great relationship with my son Spencer, and we talk every day, and to not have him here with me is tough, but knowing he's in great hands from the staff down is a really cool thing. So in terms of rivalry, I never beat Maryland, so he probably picked the right place.
Now, Nadalin was not there when you were playing, correct?
He was not. Nads came in a couple of years after.
Okay.
I played for Coach Seaman my final year. Coach Runk was my coach for the majority of my career. Seaman came in '99, and with him he brought Stan Ross and Paul Cantabene. And then a few years after that, those two got head jobs, and that's where Nads and Bugs Combs came in as their coordinators.
How was it playing for all of those coaches? Can you give me any tidbits from? I mean, those are some legendary coaches there.
I mean, two of my favorite people in the world are Coach Runk, God rest his soul, and Tony Seaman. They were great to me. I wish I could have played for Coach Seaman for a little longer. He was just as well as a great coach, and kind of dialed into some of the different things in the game. He was just such a great friend and really cared about you, really wanted to get to know you. And, Coach Runk gave me my chance to play Division I lacrosse and believed in me, and we remained close, for a long time. I mean, I've been out of school for 20 some years, and, before he passed, we were still pretty close. And, so playing for those guys was really cool. And a lot of people don't know, but Danny Ross, who was a little brother to Stan Ross, was my best friend all the way through high school and college. And we got to play for his older brother. So we knew Stan, for a long time, and then he became our coach. So it was a little strange to call him coach. But it was a great experience at the head of Towson. I spent 5 years there playing. I redshirted my freshman year, medical redshirt. It was just a really good experience, and I was able to grow as a player and have a chance to go on, with a pretty good career.
A chunk of this conversation I wanted to have was around the art of the assist, right? You were a
Yeah.
prolific assister in your time. You led the professional league. I think you set records at Towson for assists. Am I correct in
Yeah.
saying that? Yeah. And I want to talk about this because a lot of times the focus goes on the guy that scores the goal, when I think the more important player is the guy who sets that up. It was the way I liked to play when I was a midfielder. I just want to talk about, I mean, a guy that did it at that level, getting into the granular of trying to make those things happen, setting up your teammates, what you needed to do to make sure that happens. Yeah, to take me into this. What made you a great assister of the ball when it came to the game?
Well, you have to give credit to the guys that could catch them and finish them. So that I definitely had some great people that I played with. In college, I had a guy named Kevin Sturm, and he just had just amazing hands and just had the ability to, to kind of pop open. And I think that there's a great trust factor. When I got to the pro game, Bugs Combs was there with me, and we've known each other since we were 5 years old. So our chemistry was amazing. And then, Bugs was moved on to the Washington Bayhawks at the time, and I was able to play with Terry Reardon. Terry Reardon's like 6'8", and so all I had to do was throw the ball up. But I think passing at a high level, I think it's a decision. People make a decision to become great dodgers, and maybe they don't understand the game as well as what is considered a quarterback. But I knew the rules better than the referees. I knew when the pace was going to be, fast pace. I knew when the whistles were fast and slow, and I knew what I had to do to just gain that extra step to be able to get my hands free to throw the ball. So I took a great joy in playing behind the goal, but I never really took a beating. The guys that were the Dodgers, the guys like Michael Watson and some of those guys and Matt Clune, like those guys were taking on double teams and then throwing it to me, and all I had to do was find the open guy. So I don't want to make light of it because I definitely appreciate the pass, and I think that there is the thought of a feeder is kind of lost us, and I think that these guys are so super skilled. I had to be smarter. I wasn't very fast. I wasn't a great dodger, so I just had to be smarter, and I had to have great trust. And I think if you look back at all the records, I think that I probably would set records for turnovers as well because I definitely force-fed it a lot.
There's a couple components in this conversation that I wanted to have, and one of those being whenever I'm scouting a team, because I'm on the defensive end myself here in the Virginia Prep League, and whenever I'm scouting a team, it's a big old circle around guys who can just feed, right? Because if you're not dynamic, if you can't do both, if you can't score and feed, then there's not a lot of times that we're going to send a slide because you're so good at feeding. And I'm interested in how you think about that, because from the defensive perspective, if you are just a feeder, it feels like you can be taken out of the game. I didn't watch a lot of your highlights. I'm sorry, but I don't know how you got those feeds a lot of the times, but did you have to get yourself open first, or how does that work when it comes to being at the level you were assisting the ball?
So the thing that was my bread and butter was the hang up. We were able to catch guys whether I started behind and crept up to the back of the crease, or whether I started on the crease and then kind of faded back. I tried to figure out a ways to put guys in the slide game and where they didn't have a decision where they could stay with me. So there wasn't, in the pro game, you didn't really shut off much. You definitely had eyes on certain players of what they did well. But from college into pro, we didn't have a shot clock in the college game when I played, so I was able to stand back behind the goal in the hang up as long as I wanted. And what a lot of people didn't know is that I wasn't stalling because I was facing the goal. I was playing offense and I was just waiting, so they could never call the stall on me from just standing back there. So eventually the guy had to go one way or the other. And I just had a rule that I always went to the goalie side. The goalies weren't as athletic as they are now, where they couldn't play defense. They weren't pushing guys out. And so I had a really good rhythm of what I could do. And so I would make the guy come around, and then obviously they'd have to have the second slide come, and it was just a quick dish to the to the scorer. Now, you have to have the ability to come around and shoot, and you have to be, pretty high percentage and when you're shooting. So I think the ability to score a couple goals a game, kind of kept them honest. Like, hey, if you allow him to get in front, he's going to score. But for the most part, now with the shot clock, is you can filter guys out, so they have to go quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So the hang up is although it's still there, it's not like it was. It was a little bit more of a slow motion type thing when I was playing, where you could stand back there for a while. And, as the game has grown with the shot clock, is that to me, you can still hang up, but you just have to go a little bit faster. But in terms of, shuts and things of that nature, if they shut me, I would find a way to play on the crease or to pop off or whatever it was. And then hopefully we got some good dodging midfielder goals that could help, alleviate that shut where they would have to then, adjust and make decisions. But, like I said before, passing is a decision to make, and you have to be okay with it. I was always taught that you get a point for an assist and a point for a goal. And so, if I could go back there and keep my uniform clean and get 10 assists, I'm all for it.
Tell me about the different passes you can make there when you're assisting the ball. Obviously, you make that adjacent exchange, you can feed it inside, or you can skip it across. Like, what were the different dynamics there when it came to what you were looking at, how you got that done? Did you look guys off? I'm just interested in the guy that did it at that level, like the intricacies of how you were passing there.
Yeah, there was always no looks, there was always things of that nature. You get a little crafty behind the back and with backhands and stuff like that. But I think it was, if you go back, it just was really simple that if you're on one side of the field, if you're driving one side, everything on that opposite side was left wide open. And we tend to not look at that. Like, you very rarely see skip passes anymore. And when you see them, it's like, oh my God, what an amazing look, but every defender is sloughed in or spidered in, and if you just can get them to maybe take one extra step, those backside pipe feeds and those backside skips are wide open. And as long as you have guys that are high percentage, accurate shooters, you're going to get assist all day long. But it was also as simple as, somebody coming to your face and not trying to run through the track, but just being prepared to make a play. I think a lot of guys now, there's a lot of players, especially at a young age, that aren't prepared always at all times to make a play.
Mm.
And I think that, you see a lot of guys carry their sticks by their waist, but can't throw that lever pass. And I just would always like to have my stick up on my ear. I was always ready. So as soon as I saw that guy take a step, that ball was already released before he could get his stick up and knock it down. As soon as he was running towards me, the ball was already gone. And so I understood how slides worked. I understood how defenses worked. And like I said, I would catch people off guard because I knew the rules better than everybody.
Yeah, from a coach's perspective, I'm sure you understood spacing a ton. We're talking about it now, right? Being active, making sure you're in the right spots. What are some of those offensive principles when it comes to when you're from the coach's side, you're stepping on the other side of the lines now? What are you teaching your offensive guys about spacing and being in the right spots and being ready to receive passes like that?
The biggest thing that I care about and what I coach is ball movement, body movement. If we're standing still, then we are absolutely wrong. And sometimes the movement might be considered wrong, but at least it's movement. You're going to open up space. And the beauty of it is that if you can get guys to believe in the ball movement and body movement, you're going to open up dodges for what these guys are really creative at doing, which is winning their individual matchups. The problem is that they don't always have the space to continue their dodge. They're always running into somebody else. So that's, to me, that's it in a nutshell. I think that when you watch the natives and the Canadians play in the NLL and even in the outdoor game, they rely so much on catching it, throwing it, moving, and it's such a beautiful way to play that it ends up in layup goals. And so those are the things that's my approach. It's not so much sets or things of that nature. It's more, let's play a six, let's make them cover six. Through our ability and our willingness to throw the ball and to move our body.
I'm fascinated with the way, I think most notably Syracuse plays this year, where a lot of times they haven't even beat their guy and they're scoring, right? And that's gotta feel great from a perspective of you watching the game, knowing that you see the field that well and you made those same feeds yourself, I'm sure. But what about that style gets them open from the perspective of just being able to, again, score without having ever beaten your guy just because you're, I don't know, active inside or just making sure your spacing's awesome or you're moving at the correct times. What do you see from a team like Syracuse there that does so well off ball?
Two things: the willingness to throw the ball instantly, right? Not have to dodge, then throw it, and then, okay, now it's your turn. The willingness to throw it instantly. And while they're doing that, while they're moving the ball so quickly without the dodge, no matter what, the defense is still trying to move, trying to gain control or almost dictate what's happening. And when that ball is moving, it's hard to move as fast as the ball. And so I think that willingness, to move it around and set seals for one another. I think you'll see guys like Owen Hiltz and Trey Deer. I mean, how wide open are they on the crease? It's because they've gotten the defense moving through ball movement.
This is just a personal perspective here, and it's a little bit selfish. How do you stop guys like yourself? Because when I'm looking at the scouting report again and I'm trying to stop the feeders, how can I do a better job stopping guys like you?
I think it's stopping a guy like me is really easy because I'm slow and I wasn't that good. But stopping some of these high-level lacrosse players now, it's very, very difficult because even with shuts and things of that nature, the ball still goes out of bounds. There's still schemes that when it does go out of bounds, that young man is going to pick the ball up. So I think it's just having the ability, the guys that are the other five guys that are playing behind the person covering, they just have to be on point. I would always watch for defenders that were looking at me or, that meant my guy was wide open and I just had to make a decision and put the pass on the money. And for most part, my guys were catching it and finishing it. So it was very, very quick for me in terms of in and out of my stick, but, shuts definitely work. I think that, if you were covering me, I would make me dodge. I would shut off and I would make me dodge. I wouldn't shut me off. I would make me dodge to score. And if I did, then you would have to adjust. But chances are you're going to probably have a day.
I always talk about my poles and my short sticks, obviously, if they play good position there. And they have an ability to disrupt the ball and finish. What gave you the most problems when you're looking to make that feed? Where were you being disrupted most? Was it in the armpit area where he got below and was lifting? Was it the gloves? Was it up in the shoulder pad, maybe a poke check or something? Like, I'm just interested from your perspective, what gave you the most problems when it came to physical pressure when you were feeding?
Yeah, I never had any issues with guys poking or lifting. I was able to sustain that because it didn't hurt. I had trouble when guys came down with that first and second whack. And, I don't know if, some people look at attackmen as, oh, they're soft and this and that, but there's that little bone on your elbow that when it gets hit, you lose feeling. And I don't know many one-handed lacrosse players. So when that would get hit and I would lose feeling, I couldn't make the play because I wasn't a one-handed lacrosse player.
That's so interesting because defensive coaches, at least some of the ones that I talk to, we hate that slap check. Oh, man, that's interesting.
It hurt. It would hurt so badly because no matter what, that little bone bruise never healed. And you could go and you could do your thing. And then as soon as you got to practice the next day and that thing was touched, it was like a cartoon. It would just blow up. And so I had trouble with that. I had trouble with active checkers. I didn't have trouble with guys with the V holds because there wasn't a pass that I couldn't make. I could always get my hands free. I played hockey when I was younger. I could always get my hands free. I was good with the lever pass. I was good with the backhand, all kinds of different ways. There was a way that I could kind of chicken wing the stick and hold it, and referees would call them for a hold for some reason, but things have changed nowadays, but it definitely, when you inflict pain on somebody, they're thinking about that pain. They're not thinking about what they do well, which for me, I was pretty cerebral. So when you took away my ability to think because I was hurting a little bit, that turned me into a below average player.
Wow, what a nugget. What an absolute nugget. Because most coaches, again, they're teaching different, other than that coming down with that slap check because we think it's ineffective, but appreciate that. Yeah, last thing I guess I have, one hand versus two hand. How do you look at that? You obviously played with Canadians and, they're much more one-handed if you want to generalize that. Do you look at that differently when you're trying to coach that? Is a two-hand player more dynamic? Do you see a one-handed player as being ineffective?
To be honest with you, I think if you're lucky enough to have both hands, I think that that is amazing. I think you're seeing a lot of it nowadays. These kids are so good, both hands. They're working at it. They're playing a lot more. So if you can be two-handed, have at it. That was great. I was one-handed, but when you look at the Canadians and the natives, like they're so good behind the back, backhand, lever pass, they can do it all. So they really are two-handed just because it doesn't switch over,
Hmm.
to from right to left or left to right. Um, I'm not against either one. If you're a midfielder, I think that, being able to split down from left to right and score and right to left and score, I think that's extremely important. But I'll take it a step further is that I think that, you know, in the high school game, possibly a little bit in the pro game, if you can make a guy an offhand passer, a non-dominant passer, you're going to probably win that matchup, right? And so to me, you have a guy like Josh Byrne that can run down the field and throw behind the back 30 yards on a dime. I would rather have that, knowing that he's going to be able to get that pass off and it's going to be high percentage if I've taken away his left, rather than have a guy that's just okay with his offhand, because I know that he's not going to be able to throw a pass, throw a skip pass, throw a 20-yard pass, throw a 10-yard pass on the money to create more offense. And I think that still sticks in today's game, that there are a lot of people that are a little better with their offhand, but they're not dominant with it.
Can you give me any tidbits from your time in the MLL? I know that it was very up and down. When I was looking at the history of you playing, there were times where I think you took 3 years off from the game and came back to it, and then in 2007 led the league in assists. You were an All-Pro, all of this stuff. So, any kind of summary you can give me on your time as a pro, and then as a GM, I would love to see what you carried over to now being with the Chaos.
So two things. Number one is that I made the inaugural Bayhawks and was cut instantly. And then it took me 3 years to get back in. John Tucker took over the LA Riptide, and he made a call to me. And this was in '06. And I was actually at the pool, and he's like, "Can you still play?" And as a smartass, I was like, "Play what?" And that's when we started talking about the LA Riptide. And I actually told him, I said, "I don't know if there's an assist record in the league, but I said, if you give me a full season, I'll shatter the assist record." And he brought me in halfway through the '06 season. We were within, I think, one shot of making the playoffs. San Francisco beat Chicago on a 2-pointer at the end of the regulation. If they lose that game or like win by one, we're in the playoffs in '06. So we get eliminated. We come back in '07, and that was the year that he promised that he would give me a full season, and that's when I shattered the assist record. We went to the championship game. I made all pro and got some, set a record and things of that nature. But it was extremely hard to make pro lacrosse back then. Like everybody was living in Baltimore or Long Island, and those were the two top teams at that time. And to be drafted by the Baltimore Bayhawks and then go in and make it. I mean, the starting attack back then was Dan Denahan, Mark Millen, and Tommy Marichak. So whether you had a great tryout or not, like probably not getting in there. So it was very difficult. The thing that I took from my time as a professional athlete, as a player, to when I became a GM was I never felt like a pro until I got to LA. When I got to LA, I had a sweatshirt that was custom made for me. We had wristbands with my number on it. I didn't wear sunglasses at the time, and GW Mix got sunglasses, Oakley sunglasses made with the Riptide logo for everybody on the team. And he knew that my son, who was 2, Spencer, wore sunglasses, and he made them baby Oakleys. He got them custom made for him in his own little box. And I mean, when you feel that way, when you feel like a pro, even though the money's not life changing, when you feel like a pro, that was when I said to myself, if I ever get into management, if I ever get into pro coaching, I'm going to make sure that all my guys understand that they're professionals and are treated that way, and understand that I care about them, even if I have to have a tough conversation with them. And I think in all my time, there's probably a few guys that don't like me and that didn't have a great experience with me. But I think for the most part, my percentage is pretty high in terms of guys that have played for me say, I trust that guy. He was always honest with me. He always treated me with respect and like a professional. And so I think that that's so important. And that's what we're going to try to bring to the Chaos. Not that it wasn't happening, because I think that AT and Jamie Hanford and those guys did an amazing job with those guys. And I think that they felt respected and like pros. But that's just my individual preference, is that I want these guys to know that I care about them, whether they are starters or trying to crack a lineup, or maybe get the unfortunate news of, we're not going to bring them back. I have the utmost respect for the player, and think that that's what drives this game. And I want to make sure that I'm there and honest with them.
That's such a great insight into your ethos, Spencer. I appreciate that. That gives me a lot of understanding of how you're going to, treat your day to day. I had Tom Marichek and Mark Millen here in like the past 4 episodes. I've had both of them on. Any tidbits you can give me from having played with them, just seeing both of those guys?
Both tremendous. I mean, in any conversation you have about attackmen, Mark is going to be up there in the top 5, 3, whatever you want to say. I mean, he was unreal. I think his 1998 World Game performance was one of the greatest we've ever seen. And then his early years in the MLL, the guy was just a point manufacturer. He was just so good and so tough to cover. And then I don't know that there's a finisher that was creative and scored goals like Hollywood. He caught everything. He was fun to play with. He didn't compromise ball time. He wasn't a liability with the ball and dodging, but God, he could get open, and if you threw it, he'd catch it, and you're going to get a point if you're playing with him. So it was a lot of fun to play with both of them. I'm still friends with both of them today. But certainly a fan of both.
All right, we've had a great episode here, Spencer, and I know we're having some issues now with the technology, which happens from time to time, but we locked down a pretty solid episode here, 45 minutes worth. My last 2 questions here are kind of overtime questions. So 1, what is your favorite drill and why?
I like the scrap. We call it the scrap drill at Loyola. It is basically each of the guys are in the middle, like near the crease. There's 2 defenders, 3 offensive guys. That starts with a ground ball, and then you turn and you play in a 3v2. So I just think that gets the guys, good off the ground, through physicality. And then if they move the ball quick like they should, they can be very, very good. So I love the scrap drill.
Okay, second overtime question is, it's tied. Let's say there's a minute left. You got it down on your offensive side of the field. I've had a lot of guys say, I wouldn't even call the timeout, but I'm forcing you to call the timeout with a minute left here. What are you saying to your guys, and what action are you trying to run to win that ball game?
With a minute left, we're probably taking it down to 30 seconds before we get started. And then we're going to do some flip action where we get something clever and hopefully we can hit what I call the wall, which is the crease. So if we can get some outside flips and get a mumbo, maybe, we have that skip option or the crease pop where we can get it to them quickly for a good high percentage shot.
All right. Appreciate you very much, Spencer, for today's episode. I'll be obviously following up. A huge Chaos fan now. I'm going to buy my jersey, make sure I do my part.
There you go.
Here. So
Love it. Well, I appreciate you having me on.
I love it, man. I'll talk soon.
Take care.